Hi, and welcome to the London Free Press Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Gilbert. Many of us were in shock at just how high home prices had gotten around the beginning of this year. Supply could not keep up with demand, and it was certainly a seller's market. But it seems like the market is correcting itself now as the average home price has dropped about $200,000 since February. Wow. So today I'm talking with London Free Press reporter Jonathan Juha about what we're seeing now and what we can expect to happen with home prices in the future. Hi, Jonathan. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad yourself.
Good. So we just had this data released from LSTAR, London and St. Thomas Association of Realtors. They release this every month. And some months, of course, we focus on it more than others. This was a big month in November, not in a great way, was it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, some numbers that sort of like confirm that idea that definitely the market it's in correction mode. It's not just a London specific; it's something that we're seeing across Ontario and across Canada. But some of the figures, yeah, definitely staggering. As you said, the average resale price of a home has dropped by more than $200,000 in just 9 months. And it's not just prices. Like you would think that perhaps with prices going down, maybe more sales, but that's not the case. We also sold just a little bit over 400 homes last month. So it's a decade low for Elsa after a few years in which the market was just booming and red hot. So it's a big contrast in just a few months from what we were seeing just last year in 2021.
What a drastic change, because we were seeing such record highs, and I think everybody was in shock, and neighbors were talking, that the house down the street, how much did that sell for? Can you believe it went for that much? I wonder what I could get for mine, right? What a
Yeah,
stark contrast.
no, it has definitely. I mean, it may be getting some people by surprise, I guess, but at the same time, some of the growth that we were seeing, we were reporting that it was not sustainable. No one really wanted to talk about, a bubble or anything like that, but there were other factors that were influencing sort of like that price growth. I mean, when you see as well, average home prices rise by $200,000 as well, you see that there's something that's beyond the fundamentals of the market that is driving the prices. In the case for London, and again, as it was the case across Ontario and the country, the pandemic had a big influence on that. Now we're talking about high interest rates, but at the beginning of the pandemic, it was very low interest rate, were very accessible. And you combine that with the lockdown orders and people looking for bigger homes and more space if they had to spend more time at home. Uh, and people who could work from home. So maybe someone who worked in Toronto, now they don't really have to go to the office. They can look farther afield for that property that they want. So a lot of people started coming to the city. So adding extra demand to what was already like a very tight supply. And that was sort of like a combination that helped push prices. And we saw, record sales month in almost every month in 2021. Prices continued to go up by tens of thousands of dollars from one month to the other. So I guess at one point, things had to stabilize. What many were not expecting was that the crash in prices was going to be so steep and so pronounced in such a short period of time.
Is this concerning? I mean, we've lost the average home price is down $200,000 since February. Like that's almost the price of what our average home price was in the London area just a couple of years ago.
Well, it depends. I guess it depends on the reasons why you got into the market. If you wanted to, flip a property and perhaps make a quick gain on your investment, obviously this is not a trend that it's going to favor you. But what analysts and experts continue to say, if you bought a house, you're looking long term, some of the fundamentals in the market remain. For example, the fact that there's a big demand for housing and that hasn't really gone away. So in the long term, properties are still expected to, gain in value over time, but maybe they'll do it at a more moderate pace. Again, you were seeing houses that 5 years ago, someone bought them for $250,000. They were selling them for 600, 650 type of thing. So obviously, a lot of people try to get into the market to take advantage of that. But if you're looking, long term, you may be able to recoup some of what you have lost in value over the last few months, let's say.
When we had the market crash back in 2008, a lot of people lost their homes, and that was an issue back then. Because of this downturn, are we expecting something similar to that? Have analysts said anything about that?
The so far, I guess the fear is not as big as it was in 2008. I mean, there were a lot of regulations that came into place to ensure, let's say, that buyers had the financial flexibility to continue to pay their mortgages if rates went up. You know, the stress test and all of that. You had to qualify for a bigger monthly or mortgage payment than what you were actually getting at the moment. So far, there hasn't been really a lot of talk about that. I mean, obviously, each case is it's gonna vary from family to family, I guess, the conditions that they're in. But in theory, sort of like some of the safety nets or like the requirements were put in place in there to sort of like try to avoid sort of like a crash like the one that we saw in 2008.
Absolutely. Yeah. How are buyers reacting now? Are people buying homes? How is the supply and demand at the moment?
Well, the supply actually, last year there was a point where we had enough inventory that if no new homes came into the market, everything would have been sold in about 2 weeks or so. Now that supply has been growing steadily, more homes hitting the market, and since they're not selling at the same pace, the inventory is growing. I think we're past 3 months of inventory right now, which is a more stable situation to be in than what we were last year, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, at this moment, obviously, buyers are not just rushing to get properties right now, and the number of homes that are being sold tells you that picture. I guess you're always going to find, the people who, for life circumstances, need to find a new property. Maybe a new baby comes into the house, they need more space. That will continue to happen, but we're not seeing the rush that we saw since 2020, when people were fearing that they were going to miss on the market, and that if they didn't get into the market at this moment, that they were just going to 2 months from then, the prices were just going to be out of reach for them. So there's a little more reluctance from buyers to get into the market right now, waiting to see where the interest rates go, where the prices go. So it's not like the same rush that we saw in 2020, 2021 for sure.
You mentioned interest rates, and of course, this week the Bank of Canada put the interest rate up, so that will help kind of bring down the affordability for some people too, right?
Yeah, I mean, like when you look at affordability, there are two elements. I guess when the home prices were growing, many people were just concerned, saying like, you know what, I'm never going to be able to save enough for a down payment. Obviously, with the price of homes going down, that aspect of the equation becomes more accessible for people. That the down payment is not as big anymore. But when you start factoring in the interest rates and the cost of the house, which is still like high compared to historical points, then the monthly payments for mortgages may still be out of reach for many. So the affordability aspect is still, it depends on people's obviously finances, but it's not like the prices coming down have made it easy for anyone to get into a home right now. And obviously the increase in interest rates may increase the reluctance from people who they really need to look hard at the numbers and see, okay, can I afford these types of monthly payments? I mean, obviously this is more of an issue for first time home buyers. Obviously, if you already have your property, maybe you sell, you can make some equity so your monthly payments are not as bad. But if you're just hoping to enter the market, obviously it's still a little bit challenging for you to do so.
Sure. Let's talk about sellers. And are a lot of sellers hoping to still sell for some of those record high prices? What do they want to sell their homes at? What are their homes really valued at? What are the realtors saying?
Well, I was talking to the president of Elstar actually about that point, and he does believe that he's seen that prices, like sellers have not adjusted their expectations to the realities of the market right now. So that may be also a contributing factor as to why fewer homes are selling right now. Obviously, when just 10 months ago you were seeing homes selling for so much, you feel like you may be just selling at a bargain or something like that, or you're losing money. But the market has shifted definitely. It's not, you're not gonna, again, 2020, 2021, you were seeing, more than 10, 15 offers on just one property and home selling way above asking price. You're not seeing that. And it seems to be that sellers are going to have to adjust to the realities of the market right now. Maybe it's not the greatest time to sell. Maybe you want to wait a little bit longer. But the reality is also that this downward trend is not expected to end, anytime soon. Some projections by some analysts say that The decline is going to continue until the spring, until they bottom out, sort of like around that time. But the expectation is sort of like the trend will continue, prices will continue to depreciate a little bit over the next coming months before they start to bounce back or pick up again.
So yes, continuing to look at the future, have we seen most of the downturn already, or are we expecting a lot more, or just kind of is it going to taper off before it bottoms out in the spring?
Well, according to analysts at RBC, sort of like we already saw the worst of the downturn. Sort of like prices have continued to go down, but they are doing it at a slower pace. Let's say I do remember there was a month this year when from month to month the average price dropped by about $70,000, which is just staggering, right? So you're not seeing such a big drops anymore, but the trend definitely continues to be one that will see home prices continue to drop in the near future before again, when the Bank of Canada announced the latest increase this week, they were talking like they softened a little bit the language about the need of more increases in 2023. So maybe a little bit of more stability can help the market, the housing market, stabilize and bounce back in the coming months. But definitely, as I said, like the trajectory still seems to be that it's going to be prices going down and sales remaining low before things sort of like turn a corner.
And that they think that will be in the spring, and then maybe prices will even out or go up, or is there any
That could
predictions after that?
Well, no one wants to predict what's going to happen. I think that
Mm.
the most confident that they can say is, prices will continue to go down at least until that spring point. And at that point, hopefully or probably will reach sort of like the bottom point. And then we'll see whether they'll remain sort of like steady around the same mark or whether
Mhm.
they will continue to go up. Again, the reality is, London is a city that is growing. Its population is growing. So the demand side of it has not disappeared. The demand is still there. It's just people sort of like, being cautious as to when they decide it's the right moment to make the jump and try to enter into the market again. So we'll see how the next months go in that sense. But it's hard to say with some certainty what's going to be happening. I mean, the past 2 years I don't think anyone saw the big jumps that we saw in 2021 and 22. They sort of like happened, very rapidly, and this decline is happening the same way. So I guess the idea would be a little bit more stable market where prices continue to go up, but a more reasonable paces that allow people to sort of like catch up, save up enough for down payments and for their own incomes to grow type of thing.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you, Jonathan. We'll certainly be watching your reporting on the story at lfpress.com and see what happens, in the new year and beyond. Thank you so
Cool.
much.
No, thank you for having me.